So, so what do you do when you've achieved everything that you want to achieve in your 40s? What's next?
That's a tough question for a lot of people.
First
Right.
of all, that's the dream for everybody. How do you get to that stage in your life? But then, like the dog chasing the truck, what do you do when you catch it?
Yeah.
So welcome, everybody, to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Davio Venturis. I'm joined, as always, by the esteemed cardiologist, Dr. Federico Macy. Most of you know him as Dr. Suave. We are very excited to have the guest, Curt Crozier, who's going to talk to us about exactly this topic. Thanks for joining us, Curt.
Thank you for having me.
So we're excited to hear you're retired.
I am.
You're not even 50 or barely 50.
No, I'm actually 60 now, but I've been retired for 11 years.
11 years. Man.
You look great for 60. I thought you were in your 50s still.
Oh, thank you very much.
You know, every young guy at 19, 20 says, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be sailing the Mediterranean. I'm going to have all kinds of fancy sports car or cars, you know, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, whatever. Bunch of girls on my yacht. At 30, oh, yeah, easy. And then it doesn't happen.
Wasn't your son asking his other son what yacht they should buy?
Yeah, what yacht they should buy when they turn 30, of course, in their mid-20s, right? No job. But, you know, I know we're going to be billionaires by the time we're 30. We need to really start shopping for a Ferrari. I said, okay. And then, but what happens when it does happen? Maybe 20 years later in your 40s. The challenge is, what happens when all your dreams come true?
What's next?
What's next? That's not an easy question for most.
So let's start, Curt. Why don't you tell us how you got to that point, and then we'll talk about what you're doing next. I think both topics are very exciting for people to listen to. So how did you retire in your late 40s?
Well, obviously it starts, when you're young and you basically kind of, your life is set out with, kind of how you grow up and, you have certain things that are instilled in you. Like in my case, I grew up in the Midwest, a small farming community, and my father was a football coach. And so I would...
Those guys never retire.
Never retire, exactly right. But, I learned from him, being a football coach, you have to be very organized. And also, growing up in Iowa, I was a wrestler, okay? And so you have to be very disciplined. So the combination of being, very well organized and disciplined, kind of put me on my path to where I am today. And anyway, and I grew up like most kids, in rural America, went to college.
But in those high school years,
yes,
when you were wrestling competitively, it's very structured, a lot of discipline, right?
Incredibly disciplined.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the toughest sports.
Just to give you an example, so I would, again, I grew up in a small town, so it was kind of all hands on deck, where you basically played every sport.
Yeah.
And it's not like, growing up in metro areas today where it's very
They had one black guy in his town, so everybody was good at basketball there. Right?
Yeah, exactly right. So, so you play football in the fall and you'd wrestle or play basketball in the winter. Ran track in the spring, you played baseball in the summer. And that was just basically the way how things work.
Great times.
So, and I was lucky that I grew up in a town that was very wrestling oriented, right?
Yeah.
They had a very good program and they had a kind of a tradition.
Doesn't Iowa, the university, have like a famous wrestling team as well?
They do. They do. They were really good for many, many years. They still are good.
A lot of Olympians.
They've won like 20 national championships.
Right.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. But anyway, just to give you how difficult wrestling is.
Yes.
When I was a junior in high school, I played football. I weighed 185 pounds.
Yeah.
I wrestled at 145.
Wow.
I lost 40 pounds.
To be in that class.
Yes, in the span of a few weeks.
What's that class called in wrestling? It's just a 140?
145.
145 and under.
They just use the numbers.
Then more number. 145 and under.
Yeah.
And how quickly did you drop that weight?
I had to do it in probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks. You had to certify by the middle of December, I think. And certify means you can't wrestle lower than that the rest of the year. And so I lost 40 pounds and it takes a lot of work and a lot of
Starving yourself.
starving. Yeah,
Wow.
basically, yeah.
And so the coach, the wrestling coach, sort of determines where your best class is, or how does that happen?
I think it's more individual, right? You just know, like, you kind of know what the the competitive landscape is.
Yeah.
So like like if I can get to 145, I'm going to be like really competitive. I could wrestle one weight higher,
Right.
but I just wouldn't be quite as competitive. When I was a senior, I played football at 195, and I cut to 155.
Wow.
And I was trying to get to 145. I got injured like the 6th game of the season, and I wasn't able to train, so I couldn't get there. I just could not.
Couldn't
I didn't have
burn
enough-
calories.
I didn't have enough time to get to 145.
Right.
But I thought if I could get to 145, I would be like really competitive. I would have
Yeah.
a chance of winning the state championship. But I didn't quite get there, and I just wasn't strong enough at 155, to have the winning edge. I mean, I still made the state, tournament, but I just
Right.
wasn't able
Right.
to.
Well, you probably
Win.
Between in that 40-pound weight loss, you were losing not only a lot of fat but a lot of muscle too.
Absolutely.
And for guys who were more
Yeah.
natural 155ers,
Yeah.
it was tough for you to go through that.
It is,
right?
yeah. It's a slippery slope,
Yes.
obviously, yeah. But it takes a lot of willpower and a lot of
No doubt.
discipline.
So your dad is so he was your football coach
He was a
as well.
football coach, yeah.
How was that
Yeah.
playing for your dad?
It was awesome. It was great. I
What
wouldn't
position?
trade it for anything. I played quarterback.
You did. So
Yeah.
Oh, we got 3 quarterbacks at the
Did you
table.
have-
I like it.
yeah. Did
Yeah.
you have a separate quarterback coach?
No, it was a small.
He was
small
it. He was
school.
it.
Yeah, we had assistant coaches, but
Right.
it was kind of it was small, so it was all hands on deck from a coaching perspective too.
So he took the offense, your dad, basically.
Yeah, I think there were 3 coaches, and they all kind of pitched in
Pitched
and
in.
did both. He did a little bit of everything.
Right.
So yeah,
And
it was
so
fun. Though. It was awesome.
it was great.
and he'd been he coached all my life, and
Right.
so when I was a little kid, instead of going to a babysitter, I just go to work with him. So I grew up watching him diagram plays
Oh,
on the
great.
board, and I mean.
It was
So
fun.
It was awesome. It was
Yeah.
it was cool to
Did y'all
listen
run
to
the veer?
We ran the wishbone actually.
Oh,
Wishbone.
wow.
They got it from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. we went
Well,
down to-
originally from Texas.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. Yeah.
Very interesting. So the relationship with your dad was a positive one because there are plenty of examples where dad coach, star athlete, that it's a clash.
No, not in my case.
Not in
In
your
my
case.
case, he was my
No.
idol, and we had a very almost like a partnership.
That's
type of
outstanding.
How did y'all do?
We weren't. So the interesting story. So when I was a sophomore, we weren't very good. Our upper classes weren't very good, and then we moved. Actually, we moved to a bigger school. He wanted to try a different level. We went, and they just didn't have they didn't have good athletes, and so we did not win very many games. But it was still a great time. We were competitive, just weren't
Sure.
quite good enough to win.
They probably had great cheerleaders on.
They're all cheerleaders are good.
Right.
I'm kidding.
So
So you-
so then you get instilled with the wrestling discipline, organization from the football,
Yeah.
and then you go off to university. A lot of people do that. They don't retire in their 40s. So
Sure,
Walk
sure.
us what-
So I go to college and graduate from college, and I thought I was going to go to law school. Okay, but my last semester in college, I took an introduction to insurance class, and it was like the only practical class I took in
Oh, wow.
college. Okay, and the class before the final exam, the teacher says, if any prospective graduate students are interested, there's a reinsurance company that's going to be here next week for interviews. And just on a whim,
You went.
and I'm sitting in the back of my mind thinking, well, it'd be kind of probably a good experience just to interview, just to kind of
Right.
go through that process. Well, little did I know, I went through
went.
I went, they offered me a job, and I'm like, and I found out that reinsurance underwriters could do pretty well.
Pretty well. Wow.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to forego
The
law
law
school, and I got a job with a reinsurance company.
Was that in or where were you working? Where was the main office?
So the main office was in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh,
The
Connecticut.
company
oh,
was
lovely.
Yes.
It was called General Reinsurance,
Right.
and it was a Fortune 500 company.
And where had you gone to college?
I went to Drake. I graduated from Drake University
Drake,
in
okay,
Des Moines.
in Des Moines.
Yeah.
So that's where they were. Essentially, you got recruited
Yes.
prior to completing your last semester.
Yeah, and so I go to General Reinsurance in Stamford, Connecticut, and they had a training program. It was fantastic, and they trained me
Right.
to do what I did, and I was a facultative reinsurer. I was a facultative reinsurance underwriter. Facultative is a fancy word for one at a time. So what we would do like large risks, where like one insurance company couldn't assume all of the risk financially,
Right.
so they would spread the risk.
Share it
basically. They
with
would
others.
share the risk, right? So you might have $100 million office building where the primary company would only be able to take 50.
Right.
So they would call me or somebody like me and say, we've got 100 million. Can you do 50 on top of our 50?
Were you having to prospect, or were the people coming to the company?
We did everything. We were kind of like marketing underwriters. We would go call on primary company underwriters to get the business, and then we would actually underwrite it as well. And it was unregulated, so we would do all the, we didn't have actuaries or anything like that. We would do all the math.
This was in the
ourselves.
90s then.
Yeah,
so.
mid 80s,
Mid-80s to
yeah.
mid-90s.
And I worked for General Reinsurance for 20 years.
20 years.
And I was, a solid mid-management kind of person,
Right.
right? Kind of worked my way up, and it was great. It was an awesome company, a great place to learn. Before we came on, we talked about being the jack of all trades. Well,
Right.
underwriters are the jack of all trades because you see all kinds of different risks and
You were doing mostly commercial.
all commercial.
All
Well,
commercial.
not all commercial. We did do some personal, but very, very like crazy, like Michael Jackson's place in California.
Right.
would be
High
an
net
example,
worth individuals
Yeah,
who have
yeah, just
huge estates.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You did Neverland?
We did.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you get to go there?
Never went there,
Oh.
but saw the risk, and it was
I
really interesting.
think you had to be a certain age to go there.
Yeah, I think so. I was too old.
You were too old.
Yeah,
Too
I'd
old.
aged out of that position.
Dang.
Michael's representative said, "Do you have a younger underwriter there?"
Right.
Okay, so you're mid management,
Yeah.
and
so
you retired.
I worked for General Reinsurance for 20 years, and then loved it. But then I had an opportunity to go to work for a startup company, and it was basically a company that was capitalized by a couple of hedge funds, and it was a excess and surplus lines company, which is basically another way of saying specialty. And our bailiwick was a hurricane. We did a lot of hurricane business, mostly in Florida, right? It was this is in the middle 2000s, and there were like, I don't know if you remember, like in 2003, 4, 5, there was a bunch of hurricanes that hit
Yeah,
Florida and
right.
did a lot of damage. And so there was like this.
And you guys,
Ex-
you guys went there.
We went in when everybody else was going out.
Okay.
Right. And so there was just like this vacuum that was created. And so these hedge funds knew it. They knew there were going to be
Right.
opportunities. So we could kind of go in and name our prices.
So
And
I
so
used
it-
to, I used to
yeah.
be a commodities trader.
Yeah.
And the saying is, when everyone's crying, you should be buying.
Right.
And the idea is, the difficult trade, the one that nobody wants to do, is probably that makes going to be the most lucrative. So it sounds like your hedge fund guys had an idea of that. That's
Absolutely.
what attracted you to going to them, to this startup? Like that idea, or what? How did you know this is what you wanted to do?
So it was kind of a combination thing. So I'd been a reinsurer for 20 years, and so it kind of run its course.
You had as much of that as you could stand.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy. And it was
Were
funny
you married
because-
at the time? Had family?
Yes.
So
Yes.
they were happy with where
yeah,
you were.
we were comfortable, right?
Right.
Very comfortable, and it was. Go back to one of my father's college friends told me, when I was a kid, he said, when you start to work, he said, you should change your life every 5 years. He said, do something different every 5 years.
Great advice.
Yeah.
I thought so too. And so like, it says, you can basically stay in your career path, but if you're, you want to be, if you're just doing like some sort of a service job, you want to be a manager after 5 years, or you want to, or maybe you want to change focuses. And so I'd been doing this, for 20 years, and I tried to follow that advice. I'd done something different inside the career that I was on every 5, but this was an opportunity to kind of branch out from that, and it was right at the 20-year mark, and so it was like perfect. So So that's kind of what led me to do this. It was just
And you
a
like
new
their
opportunity.
idea.
And I thought, and it was an opportunity to make a few bucks. It was a startup company. I would have a little bit of equity, and so I'm like, yeah, why not take a flyer? So
And then, so then
Off
you
to the
did you
races.
have to move to Florida, or
no,
what
we
happens
actually
next?
moved to Atlanta. Or
Okay.
so our offices were our property offices were in Atlanta, and yeah, but we basically sourced all the brokers were in Atlanta, and the business comes from Florida. So
And they recruited you, this hedge fund.
the company did,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Well, one of the hedge fund, there were two hedge funds that basically did it. HBK was one of them, and I actually met with a couple of the guys from HBK when they were recruiting me, just to get me on board, kind of thing. But yeah,
So from there,
yeah.
So from there,
So
You grew,
okay, so
yeah.
from there, so then we got to back up a little bit. So that was, when was that? That was, so we moved to Atlanta in 2007. So I met my wife, and I were married maybe 2 years prior to that, and so she is a pharmacist, okay, by education, and she was working. She worked for a very, very short period of time after she got out of college as a retail pharmacist. And then she got into a kind of a consulting role. She worked for a drug wholesaler. And I think part of their deal, like when they supply drugs to nursing homes, the pharmacist has to like review all the patient's charts like
Yes.
once a month, right? And so they would do that as a service, like an add-on service. So she was just basically doing that, and she liked it. She was managing a bunch of people, and she'd been doing that for a few years. And for whatever reason, she was like on the internet one day, and she saw this job opportunity with Ernst & Young. They were looking for a pharmacist. And that's exactly right. She was like, so she comes to me and she goes, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, well, like if you can get that, that'd be fantastic. I think it would be good. And so she goes and interviews, and she could, and then they offer her a job, and she's really reluctant at the time to take it.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, this is going to take you places intellectually that you've never dreamt of.
oh, that's
Yes.
I said, you go in there and you give it a try. I said, it's going to take a while because they're going to be speaking
A different language.
a foreign language.
Right.
I said, it'll take you a year, but after a year, you'll start to get it, and you'll thrive because she's smart,
Yes.
and personable. So that's exactly what happened. So after about a year, she kind of got it right, and she became one of the probably more pivotal people in their practice. At the same time, there was a young kid that was kind of in the same situation. He was young, right out of business school, that was in the same practice, and they kind of hit it off, right? And they became the kind of the two rainmakers of the practice.
Right.
So we would get together, and he was young. He was, mid 20s, newlywed, and so we would get together, social, like just the two couples would get together for dinners, and so we get together, and they would complain. They would be like, "Man, we're working 80 hours a week. We're traveling all over. We're making all this money for the firm, and they're not paying us anything. The partners are making all the money."
Were they wholesaling pharmaceuticals, or what was
No,
it? What were they
so
doing?
they were working. So they were working as consultants.
Right.
So they would go into large hospitals and basically
Improve their
help their
system.
pharmacists. Yeah. So
Right.
there's a program called 340B,
Okay.
which I believe was originally enacted like in '92. It was done during the Bush administration, and it was for I think VA hospitals, right?
Okay.
To help the VA, basically the military folks get lower prices on their drugs.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's grown over time. It went from, I think originally it was veterans, then it went to children's hospitals, then it became more critical access hospitals or critical care hospitals.
Right.
Anyway, this program has kind of blown up, and so I may not be 100% accurate with this, but my understanding is like if you're a hospital and a certain percentage of your patients are qualified, meaning Medicaid or indigent,
Right.
that you can get a stipend
For those meds.
for those meds.
that are being used.
Right. So this was going on, and
So they don't have to deal with pharma benefit managers
Yes.
which usually pay a premium.
Well, I
You
think
can go around that.
I think they still go through them,
I see.
but they get a
They get
a discount.
A discount.
They get a
Okay.
discount. That's my understanding.
Right.
And so this program had been in place, but the hospitals weren't really utilizing it to its fullest extent. No disrespect, but I think a lot of doctors
Don't know about it.
clinicians, right? And
We don't know about
and there are
it.
a lot of hospitals that were kind of run by doctors.
Yes.
So they didn't really know
Understand
how to
it.
take advantage of
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So so that's what they would
That's
do. They
what
would
they
go
would
into
come
the
in.
hospitals
Right.
and
Got
they
it
would
now.
and they would basically and they would save the hospitals a lot
of money, sure,
a lot
yeah.
of money, yeah. And and I remember them saying at the time, and again, this is late 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
They would save a hospital on average $500,000. It was meaningful at the time,
Yeah.
right? So so
And
anyway,
and that's a per year savings on these drugs.
yeah, right.
So
it
that
was large.
pays the overhead for the pharmacy.
Yeah, so back to the dinners. So we would be having these couples dinners, and they would be complaining. Well, they'd gotten to the point where actually the guy that led their business practice took the team and they moved to a different consulting firm. Okay, and so they weren't terribly happy with that.
Right.
And they were still traveling and making all the money for the partners, and they weren't getting what they thought was fair for them. So we're having a dinner. This was like a holiday. This is like mid-December, and they're going through the whole thing again, working all the time,
Right.
not making it up. That
You'd
sort of
heard
thing.
it so many times.
Sir, heard it.
Right.
The old
And
millennials.
I said, listen, guys. I said, here's the deal. I had made enough money at the time where I could kind of do this. I said, here's the deal. I will stake you for 2 years. Okay, you guys go out and start your own
concept.
firm. Your
Yeah.
own firm. I'll stake you for 2 years. And
Wow.
her business partner was his guy's name was Andy Maurer.
The young guy.
Yeah, he's a rock star.
Yeah.
And I said, Andy, you've got an unbelievable skill set. I said, if it doesn't work after 2 years,
Yeah.
you'll be fine on the back end.
Sure.
You'll be
Yeah.
able to find something,
Yes.
right? And
Wow.
his father was an entrepreneur, so he had that inclination too, but his wife was completely risk averse. So as I'm going through this, I'm saying this out loud. She's literally kicking me under the table because she wants nothing to do this. She wants the steady W-2 income, right? But they couldn't say no, right? They couldn't say no. So I basically staked him. I said, listen, if it works out, Andy, you get half and we'll take half, right? 50-50.
Yeah.
And
Great.
I knew what they did at the time, and I knew that they would be, able to kind of generate a lot of income.
They were
a
already
lot
the
of revenue.
rainmakers.
They were the rainmakers,
Yeah.
and there was still a ton of opportunity out there for them. But what I did not know is what happened next, and that was they started to do it, and they were doing fine, and then they came up with the idea of this software product that could do it because everything they did was in arrears, right? They would go back and they would look at all these board rows and figure out what the hospitals were missing.
Right.
Well, they flipped it. They basically said, we're going to create a software product so it can happen in real time.
Now,
Yes.
so this week when you're ordering,
Yes.
it clicks in, you
Right.
get your savings up front.
So, and it's just the two of them, right?
Right.
I mean, they're doing everything by the seats of
Right.
their pants. So they hire a kid to basically develop the software.
Yeah.
One guy,
Yeah.
one guy,
IT guy.
IT guy,
Yeah.
and he
We'll
wrote.
call him Raj.
Raj.
Gosh, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have friends that do that.
Yeah.
And they make an infinite difference
Yes.
to those of us that are not sophisticated.
Right. So they hired this guy, and he wrote the code, wrote the software. He wrote 1 million lines of code by himself.
Wow.
Wow.
Came up with the software.
He wasn't dating anybody. Okay.
No,
No.
that would take some time.
Yeah.
Burn a few hours doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the problem with IT.
Right.
It's isolating, right?
Yeah. So he writes the code, develops the software. They take it to market, and I'll be darned if they didn't build the best mousetrap.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
and it just
Took off.
It caught fire.
So
Absolutely caught fire.
CEO of a hospital calls his buddy CEO or at a conference says, "Hey, guess
Yeah.
what?
Right.
Call this guy. He'll hook you up."
You got to have it.
You got
Like,
to.
I mean, you
Yeah,
have
you-
to have.
you-
Others
yeah.
had tried to do it, but nobody had done it as
Right.
well as these guys. They guys just, again, they just built the best mousetrap.
And you had equity.
Yes.
Well, they were
So,
50-50 in
and-
the company.
Yeah, and so this was completely a bolt from the blue. I never expected. I just expected them to keep doing what they were doing.
So you
and
wouldn't
do
get
it
those
really well.
dinners of the list of
Yeah.
grievances.
So-
That was it.
So
That's
this
what
is-
compelled him. I don't want to hear the damn list of grievances every time.
But that's a great segue because literally 24 months after I got kicked under the table, we have another in the same place, almost in the same table in the same restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So what do we hear from the two partners? Oh, we're working all of these hours, we're traveling all over, right?
I tell
Wouldn't-
you, the
no.
millennials have been around a long time.
Wouldn't it be nice to sell? And I'm like, I mean, you're just start. I mean, you're
Yes.
just. There's not. I don't think you have enough. You're not going to demonstrate value yet. I mean, I think if you wait now, they were starting to produce some revenue. It was coming, but I
Yes.
just thought it was a little too
I don't
soon.
know. Yeah.
And so this was in Atlanta, and they were flying to Dallas for like an industry event. And one of my friends here is a business broker,
Mhm.
and I said, "Why don't you call Larry and say, just take him to lunch, and just kind of talk him through what you're doing, and see what he thinks." And I'll never forget, 'cause I was still working. I was working for the hurricane company at
Yeah.
the time. I'm at my desk, and it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. My phone calls. It's Larry. First thing he says to me is, "Dude, they've got something here."
Wow.
Right. And I'm like, "Come
Like a big
on."
fish?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, "Are you
Wow.
serious?" You know, so anyway, so they ended up contracting with one of his competitors who took them to market, and they got a couple big firms bidding against each other.
That's the best.
And 31 months after the company was founded, they sold it
For lots of zeros.
for enough money for me to retire.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I
Wow.
got to
So your wife hit that
home run.
grand slam.
But she still works,
Honestly.
right?
She does. She worked for them for a couple years, and then she retired. But then she was retired for basically, I don't know, 6.
And
I
Curt,
shouldn't say retired because she did a lot of philanthropical stuff that she was always busy.
she had to stay on for a while.
She did
to
for-
hand on the baton, hand it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So at that time, then you have this unbelievable windfall with this very smart investment you did, and obviously very talented people with your wife and Andy, and then the young guy, IT guy, which I'm sure he got paid well. So what goes through your mind? You say, okay, well, I'm still involved with my commercial insurance business.
Did you stay with
In
them
Florida,
or did you
what
step
happens?
away?
No. So yeah, this is it's interesting. I'm not really a goal oriented. We've talked about being disciplined
Yes.
and organized. I mean, I've got those two, but I'm not really a goal oriented person.
Is that your phone, Roderick, that keeps dinging?
Anyways,
Yeah. Anyway, so, but I always in the back of my mind wanted to be financially independent.
Yeah.
That was kind of a overarching, if you will, desire for me. Not really a goal, but that's something that I always had in my mind. I just wanted to be financially independent as soon as possible. So as soon as this opportunity came up, I was like, I'm done.
Yes.
So I resigned. I basically hung it up a month after.
but you had
The-
been doing
the-
well. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
with that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like you were
Right.
still paying off a mortgage
No.
or
Yeah.
how many kids did you have at the time?
2.
Two. Were they going to high school, I'd imagine?
They were at the time grade school.
Grade school. So,
Yeah.
so you guys said,
Elementary.
okay, let's dedicate time to the family and
Yeah.
the kids. Great thing to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the other part is, in my opinion, right, is you're still young at that age where you can pivot, right? It's not like you've been in insurance 40 years and you say, I don't know anything else,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's one of the advantages of being able to put, I'm going to use a betting term, take chips off the table, say, I'm going to play with house money now,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So
Right.
what?
So now you're the dog that caught the truck.
Yes.
Now what? Because
You're standing on top of the mountain,
right.
Yeah.
looking around.
And with a great partner too. Your
Yeah.
wife is part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a euphoric like dopamine enriching scenario,
Right.
meaning happiness.
Yeah.
Because you said we did this together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really did.
It's not just
Yeah.
one guy, single guy in a dark room that,
Yeah.
hit it and made a bunch of millions.
Yeah.
And he goes, huh, and no one is around to hear the, hey, I did it, right? Often the pleasure that comes from it is doing it with someone you love.
And it's interesting you say that too, because I think the bond between us is way stronger
Yeah.
than it otherwise would have been.
Well, you believed in her.
Yeah. Oh,
And she knows
100%.
it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you said, I'm going to float you guys for 2 years, that's a huge internal support that most people wish they had. Most people don't have that. And nobody's an island. We're social animals, right? So you did it with your wife that way, and that obviously was reciprocal. And it bonded you more. It's a great story, honestly. Many people wish they could,
So, a lot of people who retire, it's actually a detriment because they don't know what to do with themselves. So, I think the next question that our listeners and viewers have is, have you escaped the trap of boredom and right? Because as a cardiologist, don't you see people that actually suffer from retirement?
Yes.
Isn't that a big problem in what you do?
Yeah, and it's usually at an older age, not someone these guys are vital in their 40s with their full faculties. I see in the cardiology world more people in their mid to late 60s who reach retirement age and then what? And, get on the golf course 3 times a week, go to, fancy holiday here or there, and then what? And then what? And so health outcomes start to worsen unless you, like he said earlier, I think that was great, you switch to a new mission. Not necessarily, hey, I have to reach these goals in 3 or 5 years, but something that gives you purpose, which I imagine you guys both have had post that moment of retirement, because you're still so young.
Yeah. My wife, Julie, is way better at it than I am the guy, the older guy who hits the golf course 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
We're bad for health outcomes, by
Yeah.
the way.
I no, right.
I mean, I love playing golf. Don't get me wrong. My friends all play golf, but you got to have something else beyond the golf.
I also work out a couple times a week. So
Good. Yeah. That finger on Netflix, huh?
yeah. I like to say I'm good at doing nothing, but I try to find micro hobbies.
Yes.
Is what I
Yes.
and it may be like finding a podcast like you guys.
Yeah, yes.
Well,
Right?
This one.
you're welcome to be a guest
know?
whenever you want to come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's things like that you find ways of occupying your time, and other things like little things, like after COVID, back up prior to COVID, as a family we would eat out 4, maybe 5 times a week. It was ridiculous,
Oh.
right?
Mhm.
Then COVID hits, and so we're eating
You're
at
limited.
home.
Yes.
And my wife has a lot of strengths, but cooking isn't one of them.
Yeah.
So I became the chef of
The
the
chef.
house.
That's outstanding.
And so, one of the things I do almost every day is I'll go to the market in the afternoon and buy whatever we're going to fix for dinner that night. Then
Yes.
I come home and cook it. So that's a
that's a great hobby.
it's great, and it's like I
Gives
mean,
you-
and I'm not talented enough that I could cook commercially, but
Yeah.
it's good enough for
Yeah,
Yeah, you're doing great.
Home.
I
So
saw.
that's like a 3-hour deal for
Yeah.
me kind of thing. So it consumes a lot of time.
Have you started, when you cook from home, we both are big advocates of cooking from home because you can control the ingredients and it's healthier. Have you
and more affordable in the end.
well, that too, but
It is.
the health aspect, have you studied, sort of gotten interested in trying to figure out like optimizing, taking that advantage of that fact that you're now in complete control and sort of optimizing outcomes?
Yes, I mean I definitely cook healthier, and I will say this: I went to the Carroll Clinic and got a physical a few years ago, one of the comprehensive physicals,
Right.
and as part of that, I met with a nutritionist,
Yes.
and it was great. So just kind of trying to shift from kind of a North American to more of a Mediterranean, if you will,
Outstanding.
diet
Yeah.
is now I don't know that I execute it perfectly, but it's better than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah. That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so I definitely I cook pretty clean, but not. It could be better.
Well,
I want to say one thing about this, the cooking and the ritual of it, because it really becomes a daily ritual, right? I saw a recent documentary on David Beckham, and he does that. And he says, when everybody goes to bed, I still get up and go clean the kitchen again. He says, I'm so proud of my kitchen that I keep it like it's a piece of art. And this is, David Beckham, who I guess he has a lot of money, and he now has found a new mission with the MLS and the Miami soccer club, right?
So
with Messi and so
Right.
on, right? So he is obsessed with his kitchen and the cooking and everything else, and he just loves it. He says, "I'm it. Nobody in my kitchen, please."
speaking of people obsessed with their
Reminds
kitchen,
me of you.
That's great.
well, and you. So one of the reasons why I was excited to be part of this podcast is Dr. Suave over here is one of the few doctors that actually has a very intense knowledge and interest in nutrition. He doesn't want to give you a stent if he doesn't have to. He'd rather change your diet. And the idea of healthy eating as the root of health.
The prevention of disease.
Most people are impressed. Most guests are impressed by this. You won't be. I've actually lost 50 pounds this year. It took me 9 months. I know that's for you. That's nothing. Oh, 9 months. Oh, what took you so long? But it's through his guidance that helped me. I always ate healthy, but I ate too much, and I had too much dessert, which I now realize was hurting me. And having the nutrition side and the cooking side, I mean, that is just a great way to spend your time because the benefits spiral outwards more and more. Have you seen better health outcomes from your family as well?
Yeah, they're all pretty fit. I think to your point though, I think we probably put our hand in the cookie jar a little too often. But other than that, they're doing pretty good though. Yeah.
What is your wife involved now?
She's back. She's doing something very similar to what she did before. Only their target audience is now independent pharmacies as opposed to large hospital pharmacies.
I see.
So she's trying to.
I shall need to talk to you.
I was about to say the
360
same
RX.
thing.
I have a pharmacy that I may want to talk to your wife about.
Definitely.
A
talk to
very
her about it.
interesting program.
I'm sure she'd be happy.
All
to.
generics, U.S. made.
Yeah.
U.S. made, baby.
Yeah.
So all great, U.S. made. Yeah.
Very cool.
So you were sharing prior to the start that you were diagnosed after that physical or at some point in your follow-up that you had elevation of your PSA. Please explain.
Yeah.
And really quick, what is elevation of your PSA for the listeners out there like me that don't know what that means?
So that is the marker or enzyme that is elevated in people in whom we suspect prostate cancer. So it's
Okay.
called prostatic specific antigen. For people 50 and under, it should be typically below 4.0 nanograms.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So, as per decade of life, it can go up basically another half to 1 point. So by 60, you should really be below 5.0.
And you're at 7 now?
Yeah, maybe even higher. So I was originally diagnosed 6 years ago. I went in for a routine physical, and I'd never had any. I didn't know because nobody had ever pointed it out before, and my PSA was, I want to say, 13.
Yeah, it's extremely high.
Very high.
Yeah.
And I was,
Again, normal, no more than 4.
and I was 54,
Yeah.
and they basically said, you need to go to a urologist right now,
Right.
kind of thing. And
Right.
so I
And there's no
did.
family history.
My
Well,
grandfather had it, but he very late in life, not early
It's a
onset.
slow cancer
yeah,
in
it's a-
most.
Yeah, and they basically they told me that all males get it,
Eventually.
and just usually something else
Right.
gets you, not the prostate cancer. But if you get it early,
Usually it's the
Yeah.
heart.
Let me say two comments on the aside.
Yeah.
Number one, COVID infection can increase your PSA.
oh,
Yeah. So I'd be curious to find out when you were diagnosed, number one. Number two, in African American populations, it can be a far more aggressive cancer at an earlier age. So doctors need to have a sort of higher sensitivity and threshold for checking at-risk populations. So what year were you diagnosed with an elevated PSA?
Yeah, I think it's 2017.
2000. So
Yeah.
prior to COVID. Okay.
Prior to COVID, and I went through a treatment protocol that entailed brachytherapy.
So initially, you had a
Reiki?
biopsy, brachytherapy.
Brachytherapy.
We'll explain.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you had a biopsy. You went to see the
I
urologist.
did had a biopsy, and
They put you on antibiotics for a little
Yes.
while. They said, hey, it's not prostatitis.
yeah, my Gleason scores were 8s and 9s.
8s and 9s,
So they're
okay.
like, we got to do something
Yeah.
about it.
So
Now,
higher risk for
Yeah.
spread.
And the interesting thing at the time was nobody really quarterbacked it. They kind of left it up to me,
Yeah.
which was almost unsettling in a way. So I went and I saw a surgeon to have a prostatectomy,
Yes.
and then I also went to a radiologist.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
When you talk to the surgeon, did the surgeon, I don't know, he or she, it doesn't matter, explain that there are nerve-sparing prostatectomies versus regular prostatectomies so that you don't have erectile dysfunction as a result from severing the nerves?
Yes. Yeah, that was that was a concern, obviously.
Because I've seen guys that end up with a bag,
Yeah. Right.
right,
Yeah.
as a result of a
Sure.
prostatectomy.
Right.
Yeah. And-
So, you go from being a vital guy at 50, 55, where the world is your oyster. You've done everything you wanted. You're very happy. And, the more there's a correlation between the more golf you play and the higher the PSA. I just made that out.
Yeah.
It sounds good, huh? So
I'm going to start bowling then.
yeah, you can go. Damn, is it? Oh, that's for hemorrhoids. More bowling, more hemorrhoids. Choose your pick.
Yeah.
No. So at the time, they recommended the radiologist say, okay, I can do the brachytherapy with the gold seeds.
Did the brachytherapy, also did some external beam radiation,
Right.
and did hormone therapy.
Right.
And the brachytherapy was a breeze. I was not a fan of the biopsy. The biopsy
Right, it
was
was
not
traumatic,
Good. Yes.
yeah.
But the brachytherapy was a relative breeze.
So
There-
that's localized radiation
where
to
they s-
kill off the cancer.
Yeah.
As opposed to whole body
Right.
or chemo.
And the external beam radiation was not bad. I did 16 treatments. I maybe felt a little bit in the dirt by
like
the end.
100 rads each one, 16 times.
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
know what the
They
rad-
they put a
yeah,
little square on you. And
Yeah, oh
you
yeah.
go in
I've
and
got three markers, three.
they get your
tattoos.
dick up like this, and they
Yeah.
radiate down here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
You got a little massage there. From
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Uh-huh. No, there's no happy ending with this. Okay, just in case
That,
you're wondering.
that was my next
He's
question.
Greek.
Right.
He's Greek. You know where his mind's at.
Oh yeah.
Well, in Greek
Um,
hospitals, I think they do it different. But then carry on.
The hormone therapy I was on for a year. What they didn't tell me was that for every month you're on, it takes a month to get off, and so that was the worst part for me.
Right.
They basically turned me into a menopausal
male.
old woman.
Menopause. Yeah.
I had hot flashes, and I was very sensitive. I would
Yeah.
Cry at movies?
I would cry during pet food commercials. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it was no. I actually emotionally was okay, but the hot flashes.
And the libido went down as well.
Oh, yeah,
I imagine.
absolutely,
And
yeah.
You have very
Yeah.
little desire.
right.
Yes. Because andropause, which is the official name,
Oh,
doesn't happen to us.
this is where we do the regular
Take a
segment.
drink.
Yeah. Well, he
when
just
I come up
sa-
with a word,
a
new
Greek word. Andropause is for
oh,
the
andropause. Yes.
from the Greek word
from the
andros
Greek.
for man. Yeah.
Yeah, andropausia. So the andropause, for most men, it's in their mid 70s, some give or take, depending on genetics, how well you've taken care of yourself. So someone who is being induced with hormones to lower testosterone, to lower the conversion of testosterone to the metabolites, like 5-hydroxytestosterone, the active one. So when that goes at a young age to 0, you definitely feel like you've jumped 2 decades from 55 to 75, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was rough. It was rough, and I was happy.
Oh,
to
and
be
now
there
you can
with
go
it.
into politics
Yeah.
in the U.S. Don't we have a lot of octogenarians in politics in the U.S.?
It's a precursor. I
It's a precursor. That's what I'm saying. Now you're ready for politics. Sorry.
It's good. So I've basically been clean ever since, and then I went in for a physical just a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Not even, And
So the PSA went down.
zero.
Again.
I was basically
went to zero.
Well, was it 0.1,
So-
whatever the
Yes, and
Not-
minimal.
nominal or whatever
Right.
minimal.
So
yeah.
2017, you go through this very intense
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
And then so 2018, 2019, your PSA remained low.
I would get it checked initially every 3 months, and
Right.
then for the last 3 or 4 years, every 6.
Right.
And it was always, again, nominal or minimal.
Right.
And so I go in, and this was end of August, early September, and my PSA is 7. And my doctor's like, you got to go see the urologist again, or I
Right.
go see your
The radiologist.
your radiation oncologist.
And no symptoms of anything.
Zero.
So
Not in-
not
in-
having to get up at night 2-3 times.
No.
No
And originally,
weak stream.
originally I had none either.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, no symptoms whatsoever.
No, zero.
So you did
symptoms.
not have hypertrophy at all.
Yes, both times it was a bolt from the blue. Had
Right.
no idea
No
at all.
symptoms.
I feel great. Physically, I feel fantastic.
And able to feel again like you were 55.
Yes.
Like you
Yes.
shed those 2 decades.
Right.
Good.
Right. Yeah.
And your testosterone level came back.
It came back. That's a good. I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because my testosterone was kind of in the 400 to 500s,
Right.
which I think is
Pretty normal for someone at 50s.
mid range, kind of where
Yeah.
you want it.
So for everyone listening, you young guys, you start off at 7, 8, 900, and with each decade, we drop a little bit. Unfortunately, in the U.S., probably because of the food industry, other chemicals that we may become exposed to, viruses and so on, we have the lowest average testosterone levels in men ever now. So perhaps back in the 60s and 70s, let's say a 50-year-old, the normal level would have been 600 to 650. Now it's 450 to 500, the optimal level in a mid 50s gentleman. So there's no exact causality by what are called the Bradford Hill criteria. I just need to say this. That proves that the food is behind it, but many experts do believe that our food industry is causing the lowest testosterone levels in the history of males in Western societies.
Well, I know that my testosterone, once you got me healthy again, went back
You improved
to
because you
lower levels.
You had some insulin resistance and other factors that you've shed, and so less inflammation
Yeah.
as well. So I just had to say that on a side because a lot of people don't know these little nuances. They think they're supposed to have at 60 the testosterone of a 20-year-old and perform the same. Not really, even in optimal situations. There may be a 50% drop by then. So yours came back up.
Mine came back up. Yeah.
To what should have been normal all along.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah. So mine spiked, and so I went back to UT Southwestern, who I went through the protocol with them
Right.
the first time, and so they did a PET scan, and PET scan was pretty good. I do have a spot on my lung that I'm gonna have a biopsy Wednesday
Wow.
just to rule it out. But there's a very remote chance.
A small nodule.
nodule.
But that's
yeah.
not the typical
No.
metastatic
No.
trajectory of prostate cancer.
It's my understanding. Typically, it's bones.
Yes, in the spine and local
or
organs.
the kind of the contiguous areas,
Correct.
if you will. So yeah, so there's like less than a 2% chance that it would jump to
yes,
your lung.
yeah, very rare.
But they want to rule it out, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm going to go through that procedure. Hopefully, it's still if I do have a reoccurrence, it'll just be in the prostate. and
Right,
we
right.
can address that.
And so, are they giving you right now hormone? Nothing. Just not
Nothing.
wait till the biopsy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, no antibiotics either in case there may be some prostatitis.
No, nothing
Right.
yet.
And okay,
after Wednesday.
After Wednesday.
yeah. So lots of important information in the following weeks.
Yeah.
Very good. And other than that, your health has been great.
Yeah, I've been fantastic.
No
yeah.
issues with cholesterol and
No.
blood sugar, blood pressure.
Now that he's doing the Mediterranean diet,
It's much better. Yeah, yeah. I had prior to doing that, I had a little fatty liver.
Yeah.
Definitely had fatty liver. Cholesterol was kind of bumping into wasn't high, but it was
Getting there.
It was there.
Borderline.
It was bumping into it. Triglycerides were high.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you were developing the what we call metabolic syndrome, where all of those visceral fat, hemoglobin A1C starts to jump up, the triglycerides, low HDL, and of course a little borderline blood pressure. All of these, about a quarter of the Caucasian population in the U.S. has metabolic syndrome.
Well, that's where I was on my way to, and that's when he stepped in and saved my life.
And the results are, of course, heart attacks and strokes and heart failure and sudden cardiac death, major adverse cardiac events.
As soon as he told me that, I got religion.
Yeah.
We try to promote all that so people are aware. They go, do I have metabolic syndrome? Because if so, you're going to have more events earlier in life.
Right.
Including vascular dementia and erectile dysfunction and so on, right?
Right.
So what next? Let's say, God willing, this turns out to be a scar from some infection you had in the past, or a benign lymph node, or some spot that has calcium in it, right? 98% chance of that.
Yeah.
So if you're betting in Vegas, I'd bet on you that you're going to be good.
Yeah,
for sure. And take the point spread.
I'm optimistic.
So what next? Are you planning on? Let's assume you're going to live into your 90s.
Yeah.
You got 30 plus years, dude.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do?
Right. Well,
Not golf 3 times a week.
No, probably 5 times. No. So right now, my focus is just
your health.
Health right now, and then we'll kind of figure out the long-term prospects after that.
You said your wife is back on the saddle doing.
Right.
Same for the pharmacy.
And she's still complaining about working all these hours, traveling all over the place.
Okay. So that's more not only her specifically, but maybe the fact that it's part of the how shall I say it?
The female condition?
Okay, you said it. Of love me,
I'm not
please. I need a hug because I'm putting in a lot of time for us. Huh?
So have you traveled to Europe? Have you done a lot of traveling now that you've?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of traveling. My wife has been on a Spanish-speaking kick.
Oh, cool.
Yes, ever since we sold the company we sold, I should say.
What is her background, her race, ethnicity?
Yeah, she's pasty white.
Pasty white.
Pasty white. She grew up here.
Anglo.
Yeah, she grew up in the Dallas area.
But her ancestry is from England, Scotland, Ireland.
I would say
WASP. She's a WASP.
She's definitely a WASP.
WASP. Okay.
Yeah, one of the islands off of Scotland. I think. Yeah.
Oh, that is WASP. That's as WASPy as it comes.
Very WASPy. Yeah.
So she's starting to learn Spanish. Wonderful.
She started to learn Spanish 11 years ago, let's say, and she's been very, very dedicated to it.
Excelente.
Yes, and
maybe she wants to do the podcast with Fred in Spanish.
Yeah, she would love that, actually.
Yeah. We can talk pharmaceuticals and where the industry's heading.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've been to Spain a few times. We've been to Europe a few times.
Have you been to Greece yet?
We have been. We went last year. We went to Greece.
Let me guess. Mykonos and Santorini.
We went to Santorini. Which is the windy island?
Syros.
No, Mykonos.
Mykonos. We went to Mykonos.
That's the one where everything's white and blue.
Yeah, with the windmills.
Yeah, I think we went to Mykonos. Athens and Mykonos.
Yeah,
we got to get you to Corfu.
Corfu.
Okay. Well, we'll go back.
That's his family.
When Greeks go to Corfu, they can't believe it because it is so green. As you know, where you went was brown.
Yeah,
right?
it was. Yeah.
Corfu is the Greek island. They call it the Garden of the Gods.
Oh.
And it's where Queen Elizabeth's husband was born.
Yeah.
So we have to get you there, and we'll make a plan on that.
I would love to go back.
Yeah.
He was supposed to go this summer. We're not even going to get into that. He didn't go.
I will go next year. I went to the other side, similar as you did. So very enjoyable, beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Santorini, you walk on top, and it's a beautiful place.
Roderick, I see you chomping at the bit in there. So jump in there and ask a few questions.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for sharing everything that you shared with your story and your success and how you got to where you got to be able to retire. So my question for you is, being coming from a small town and having to go up in weight, down in weight, play different sports, wear different hats, do you think that was instrumental in the way you took on life after that?
Yeah, 100%. I think everybody's wired differently, and I think I think I am kind of I have kind of a conservative wiring in me anyway. And then when I say conservative, I mean risk averse. I will take a little bit of risk, but not a ton of risk. And so I think that coupled with the discipline, I was very disciplined from a financial standpoint, kind of throughout my career. For instance, I was a W-2 wage earner, and I made pretty good money, and I would get bonuses every year. And for example, I would take the bonuses that I would get, and I would save at least half. And I was always dedicated to like 401ks and things like that.
That's why you had the money to invest when the chance came.
Absolutely. I would just always kind of stockpile finances over time, just let it build. So, and pretty aggressive with investing and that sort of thing. But aggressive with investing, relatively conservatively. I wouldn't do like crazy things like
not a lot of crypto in that portfolio.
No crypto or anything like that. Yeah. So.
And another question is, did you have siblings? You grew up with siblings?
I have a sister, younger sister. She's 6 years younger. So far enough apart in age that we were, we weren't close.
You're almost
like
not
that.
siblings at that difference.
Yeah. It was. It's.
You're like a cool uncle or something.
Yeah. Or maybe not the cool one.
Not the creepy one either.
Because the reason I bring up siblings is because I didn't know if you grew up with brothers. I mean, you said you looked up to your father. You were with him when he was doing the plays. And, you seem competitive, and you seem like, I just met you, but you seem very humble, committed. I hear the stories with the kids, your wife, cooking, and doing what you do. And actually, the 2-year, when you told them, for 2 years, I'll support you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you believe in something, you're committed, and you're committed to winning. So that's why I think it had to do with your upbringing. So that's why I was asking about your siblings and things like that. Being in a small town also, how small, by the way, when you say small?
So the town I grew up in, I think the population when I lived there was like maybe 3,000 people.
Wow.
And I grew up in the town was called Winterset, Iowa, which is kind of interesting that there's John Wayne, also known as Marion Morrison, was born there. Yeah. And Robert Waller
Howdy, Pilgrim.
wrote a book called The Bridges of Madison County. So if anybody's read the book or seen the movie.
Well, the movie, yeah.
Well, all the women listening to this podcast have.
So that's where I grew
Clint
up.
Eastwood and
Yeah. I always thought it was kind of interesting that they romanticized...
Meryl Streep?
Yes, Meryl Streep. They romanticized the covered bridges of Madison County.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid, we would ride our bikes out and with our BB guns and shoot pigeons from
there.
Yeah. So anyway.
Very good.
Well, that's it. That's all the questions I had. I just had to ask those two, but I want to share that you're humble. You sharing your personal, struggle right now with your health and everything. You're a very likable guy, and you sharing that and being transparent, coming from a small town and retiring at 50 is a big story.
49.
Yeah.
In his 40s.
But that's not what is typical. Most young people that have this goal of usually set in dollars, it doesn't usually go that way for most.
And
it doesn't mean you can't dream, but you got to be practical.
And I think the thing to take away is he didn't retire off of what he thought he was going to retire off of.
Yes.
It was being open to the possibilities.
Yes.
Having the compassion to listen, and then the aggressiveness to step in. And it came from a completely, as you said, from a bolt of blue out of nowhere where you weren't expecting it. And I think that's a lesson for everybody, that life doesn't take you how you plan on it.
That's a great point.
And that's why you have to be open to where it actually does take you.
Yes.
I got a question. You seem very calm, right? You're a calm dude, relaxed. What gets you excited? Like when you play sports, were you like, you seem like very calm, but you played sports, so I know that killer, excited guy is in there. What gets you excited?
Yeah, that's a good question. I used to be much more fiery. I don't know. As I've aged, I've just become more composed.
The andropause.
Could be. Could be.
Yeah, andropause. But wrestlers, like boxers, like hockey players, people that play, heavy duty contact sports, can be smooth as silk at home. They get all that aggression out. That's part of the good thing about those sports,
Sure.
right? You unload all that on another guy. No, not in a bad way, just competitive. Two alpha males going at it. Come home, you're like, I just want to lay on the couch and watch a movie.
I will say this: having gone through cancer, it definitely changed my perspective on life as well. That I would say I was much more competitive prior to going through the treatment protocols and coming out on the other side.
Right.
And now it's like I'm just kind of happy to be here. It's like I don't care if I win or lose. I just want to play.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Part of the
it definitely adds perspective to your life.
Perspective and priorities.
And speaking of sports, and when it comes to your kids and you growing up playing sports, do you feel? Because I feel sports is important to play when you're young and teaches you a lot. Did you teach your kids sports? Did they play sports? And do you believe that sports helps kids in their life?
Yeah. So yes to everything. My kids were involved in sports, still are, but I didn't push them. And really,
Did you coach because you had the time?
I did not coach. I tried coaching a little bit a long time ago, and I just didn't. I wasn't comfortable doing it.
Sure.
I liked it. I liked it a lot, but my expectations were too high to coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And so and with my kids, I didn't push my dad didn't push me either.
That was just you.
I was all me. It was all internal.
Yeah, that's great.
And he would facilitate.
Right.
And that's kind of what we've tried to do for our kids. If they
It's the
want to
best.
do it, man, whatever resources you need, we'll set that up for you. But if you're not interested, then we're not going to push you to do it. So,
That's the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stop making your kids run laps when they throw an interception.
Yeah, that's a little extreme.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
Fred, do you have any
well, my last
points?
thing is everybody make sure you get your physical exams every couple of years. Make sure you are diligent about it because detecting early saves lives.
100%.
Well, everybody,
Yeah.
this has been the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Davio Venturis. We've been joined by the wonderful guest, Curt Crozier. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Also, with the eminent cardiologist, Dr. Federico Suave, as you know. Actually, your name is Dr. Federico Macy. We
Yes.
just call you Dr. Suave. Please like and subscribe us on YouTube. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. And thanks again. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.